welcome to EnvironMental with Dandelion, the podcast where we lean into sustainability stories that you might have missed. In case this is your first environmental episode, we're your hosts and the Dandelion Duo, if you will. My name's Court. This is Hop. Our mission is to make noise for purpose-driven brands, and we like to push out these vital sustainability stories and conversations into the mainstream. Before we jump in, though, we want to remind you that algorithms may not love conversations around some of these topics, but we refuse to censor ourselves and censor this conversation in general. We're not going to fall into the green hush, and so we need your help making sure that these stories are heard. So please, please, please spread the love by liking this podcast, subscribing, and sharing this episode with your friends who lean a little eco. On our latest episode, we covered Greenpeace's court case that introduced an anti-SLAPP litigation. So if you want a little bit of background, go check out that episode. But we want to make sure that everybody's sort of on the same page around this conversation because it's really confusing, quite frankly.
It's really confusing. Yeah.
So we're going to give a little bit more background and talk a bit more around this type of kind of legal action and how these larger conversations around climate action and social and environmental justice are happening, where these are happening, are they actually helpful, and so on. Before we jump in, let's get started with some fast good news in the sustainability world.
Yay! Okay, here's some fast good news because everyone really needs good news right now. Health practitioners have been saying for a long time that moving away from fossil fuels will protect the lives of future generations. But healthcare in general has been largely absent from the climate change conversation. That could be changing, though. That's really exciting. With Peninsula News Review reporting on the first fossil fuel-free hospital in British Columbia, announced this year to be open in 2027. In policy news, Texas, yes, you heard that right, Texas, is quietly choosing renewable energy with a deafening silence. The Hill shared that 3 anti-renewable bills died in Texas legislature because they missed the deadline for decision-making in the House, signaling that opinions on the future of energy might be changing. I love they were just like, we're just not going to bring it up and it'll just go under the rug. It worked. Yeah. And maybe you heard this one. The Good News Network shared a story about researchers from the Riken Center for Emergent Matter Science and the University of Tokyo developed plastic that dissolves in seawater within hours. The plastic is non-toxic, not flammable, doesn't emit CO2, and won't leach chemicals or microplastics. Awesome, right?
Amazing.
And shout out to our friends at AdNet0, who we've had on the show before, because TikTok pledged with them last year, and their action plan really pushed the company towards climate transparency. And they are partnering with Scope 3 to understand and reduce their emissions in the digital landscape, and to let creators know that they're doing it and what their emissions actually are. I'm actually really excited. Good job, AdNet0, for that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. It's great. And hey, I've been really meaning to share ground news with you and our subscribers because it's where I get ideas for a lot of the stories that we share. It is such a fantastic way to find stories that get you out of your echo chamber because they share political blind spots and they cover all the sides of the news on the one platform. They also share how factual each article that you're reading is, which is my favorite part. I always look for like high or super high factuality in these. It's an app. And we're going to drop it in the show notes. And when you use my referral code, you can get a month for free. So check the show notes for that. Ground news is fantastic.
Yeah. It's really hard to find news out there that isn't biased. I think this is such an incredible platform to like really clearly show you those potential biases in the articles that you're reading. So here we are.
Yeah. It is great. And speaking of news and drama, yes, we've been talking about the lawsuit between Greenpeace and Energy Transfer. We went really deep into that story in the last podcast, so definitely recommend checking that out. In case you need a little refresher, the long and short of it is Energy Transfer sued Greenpeace over the Dakota Access Pipeline protests, and they won. It's more than $600 million. And now Greenpeace is countersuing internationally in an anti-SLAPP case, which is one of the first anti-SLAPP cases in the EU since the EU restructured what anti-SLAPP looks like.
Let's define some terms.
Yes. So SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuits Against Public Participation. It's basically any civil legal stuff brought by businesses, government bodies, or elected official against those who oppose them on issues of public concern. So these can be anything. This can be like a protest. That's really common. That's what the Dakota Access Pipeline stuff was. But it can be letters to the editor that were published. It can be flyers. It can be petitions. Is anybody who's using their right to the freedom of speech to speak out against someone then gets sued, that can be considered a SLAPP case. And the most common way is through defamation.
So an anti-SLAPP case would be if a defamation case was brought to court and a company, like in this case, Energy Transfer, was saying Greenpeace said things that hurt their ability to profit as a company. So they were being defamed. But the anti-SLAPP case, so what Greenpeace is now fighting for is by saying, well, everything we said is true. This can't be defamation. You're just trying to not have us talk about you.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's an interesting territory, and it is a new territory, really, because this particular case is now outside of the U.S., right? So previously, the defamation case existed in a particular state, Minnesota, was it?
Yeah, in North Dakota.
North Dakota, pardon. Right. So now we're in a completely different jurisdiction, right? We're in European law now because this has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger as this has gone on.
Yeah, and I think I think Energy Transfer misjudged who they were dealing with. I think it's an oversight by them because, I mean, defamation cases, SLAPP cases, they're often brought against individuals or individual businesses. And Greenpeace is massive. So they have the resources to fight this kind of case. And what Energy Transfer did that I think was a major oversight here is that they sued Greenpeace International, which means that Greenpeace International is headquartered in the Netherlands, so they get to take it into international court, which I think is great because this gives an international precedent for the freedom of speech, which I've never really seen before. And maybe if you've seen it and you know a case, please drop it in the comments because I would love to look at more of that. But our world is getting smaller and smaller with the way that companies are set up now, and I think having an international precedent for the freedom of speech is so lovely, and it's better to protect people better. And especially in the US, a lot of our conversation last month was about how our rights to freedom of speech are being taken away. And this could be a precedent for that to then go to the international stage. And that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean,
that's my hope.
Yeah, right. I mean, I agree with you that I think that Energy Transfer maybe didn't know what they were getting themselves into, because I think that Greenpeace International is probably we've been waiting for this our entire existence as an organization.
Yeah, they're like, please.
This is all we've ever wanted.
This is what we want.
Right. They're ready to fight this. So I'm really interested to see what happens. I mean, it is it's a very interesting example. So we'll see what the future holds. But we are reminding you, audience, of this now because there's a lot of dissent happening in the world, which we love to see you, love every single one of you.
Yes, but keep shouting from the rooftops.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But stay factual and have evidence of the stuff that you're saying, because this is a reality of things that are really happening. These countries are companies rather, are definitely, getting lawsuit happy with defamation and stuff like that. So don't get slapped.
Don't get slapped.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. I mean, you could get slapped even by your local politician if you said something about them that they didn't like. So just don't get slapped. And if you do, be able to prove that what you said was truthful.
Yep.
That anti-SLAPP case preliminary hearing starts today, July 2nd, 2025, the day that this episode will go live. So you can pretty much guarantee we're going to keep an eye on that and keep updating you on our monthly sustainability news podcasts.
Definitely. And also in the show notes, we're going to put an excellent resource from the ACLU on how to protect yourself against any potential SLAPP cases. Check that out if you're going to be, maybe saying anything too strong. Not too strong, but
never too strong. Keep it strong, keep it truthful.
Right. Love it.
Keep it strong, keep it truthful could just be Dandelion Branding's tagline. Our tagline is elevate your impact. Yeah, it's technically elevate your impact, but maybe it's just going to be keep it strong, keep it truthful from now on.
Dude, okay. I'm down. I like that. What?
My next sign will say keep it strong, keep it truthful.
Honestly, that's a good strong. Yeah, that's a good sign too. All right. Oh. So let's keep up that good work. All right.
Whew. I always have to get ready for our main topics.
Yeah. So there's a lot happening in the world right now. Yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of dissent, there's a lot of protests, there's a lot of really tough stuff happening with our rights and politically, but there are also places of hope in the world. And there are also places where good is coming out of conversations. And one of those main places is conferences. They're also just a really lovely reminder that there are other people in the world that feel the same way that you do.
Definitely helps. Yeah, because all of this can feel very isolating, when when the world, you feel like you're fighting up against a lot of big systems and a lot of, there's a lot of huge things that do need to be addressed here in this world. But a lot of those conversations and a lot of those kind of higher level decision making are happening at these types of sort of conferences, like large scale events.
I spoke at Reset Connect at London Climate Action Week last week, which is a business leadership for sustainability conference. And for me, it felt really important to attend because it puts a lot of folks in the private sector together, and we walk away with inspiring ideas, ways to grow, new connections. And it's important because it's a place where we can talk about our actions and then take them back home and really create a groundswell of businesses and individuals that are doing the work in the world. This is my second year at Reset, so I'm going to keep going. I really love it's such a wonderful conference, and it's really accessible for folks. It's free to attend. It's really great if you're just interested in sustainability and you want to know what's out there. I highly recommend checking out London Climate Action Week and Reset Connect. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There is a lot of wonderful private sector events, but they're kind of hard to find really good ones because basically anybody can make a conference.
Yeah, it can be hard to find good ones that are of substance, ones that you would actually find meaningful connections or inspiring, companies and stuff like that. It can be really hard to kind of pick and choose. I think Reset Connect is such a phenomenal example of real movers and shakers that are getting together there.
It is, and it's connected with London Climate Action Week, so there's a lot of other events around it. I also really like the UN ones, and we always go to 1% for the Planet when we have them. We're also a member of 1% for the Planet. Shout out to that conference. And there's a great private sector event coming up in New York, which is a leadership summit. I don't think we will be there because sustainability and we have to fly, but if I could choose one to go too far away, I'd probably choose that one this year. It looks awesome.
Yeah. So if you're on the East Coast, check it out. We'll put that in the link in the description as well.
Yep.
It's a very good one.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I guess, though, or just additionally, these types of there are large policy decisions that get made at conferences sometimes too, right? Like,
yes,
all of the sustainable development goals were all decided in conferences like these. Yeah. Which is now the precedent, basically, right? This is where these sort of things happen. This is where policy is influenced and where government scientists all come together to really make change.
Yeah, and they really put the spotlight on important things. Like in June, the UN held a conference for governments around the world to step up in support of oceans. Now, we regularly cover deep sea mining, and we are adamantly against it. And we, again, will put the petition and the updates in our show notes. We got a lot of good stuff for you guys in the show notes today. But that conversation continued at this UN conference in June. And I would say, like, in reading about it and reading what came out of it, I think it looks like there was a lot more commitment, but there still needs to be a lot more. There's a lot of really big countries that haven't signed on to stop deep sea mining, even though I think there's like maybe almost 40 that have put a lifelong moratorium or a complete ban on it, which is fantastic, but there needs to be more. So we're just going to keep talking about it and keep telling people to sign the petition. Because getting these agreements on a global stage is super important. And yeah, so that one was mid-June. Yeah. And then the next one is in November. It's in Brazil, and that is COP 30. And I think barring COVID, they've had one every year. So that means that the UN has actually been holding climate conferences for 30 years.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah. I feel like the term COP, like the conference, is sort of known, but like maybe folks aren't super familiar with exactly, I guess. So it's put on by the UN, or rather a specific kind of subsect of the UN, which is the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And they hold the COP, Conference of Parties, like the conference is called COP. All right.
Yeah.
So, and that is the group that's responsible for decision making and implementation of all of these decisions that are that like exist there. It's sort of it's that group of 198 countries. That's very exciting. 198.
Yeah, I think there's like 250 in the world, or 260 or something. So it's most of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, most of them. That's great.
Most of them. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of stuff comes out of it. You know, the Kyoto Protocol, 1997, which were the first global reduction targets. So that means we've had reduction targets since globally since 1997. I didn't know that. And the Paris Agreement happened in 2015. Maybe 10 years ago was the Paris Agreement.
Yeah.
The IPCC, which is a working group for figuring out like the science, the overviews, how we can mitigate it, like all of that was made from the COPs. That's awesome. Is it enough? Like,
right.
Are we doing enough?
It's so right. I think our point here is that it's fantastic that these things are happening, right? That these larger scale conversations and these conferences are in existence, and we are grateful for that there is a place in the world where these conversations are happening. But then it comes back to actually kind of creating real legislation and things in each individual country to uphold these things that you're agreeing to. And that's usually where it devolves, right? Is that where things sort of start to fall apart a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really inspiring to be with, like, you know, literally the leaders of 200 other countries getting excited and making these choices and feeling really inspired and like, let's go do it, you know, but then, and nothing. I looked up where we actually are because I wanted to know, is the Paris Climate Agreement working? Do the COPs actually work? Are we agreeing to things? So there's a lot of agreeing, but we're falling way short of the targets in two ways. One is in the Paris Climate Agreement, countries set their own climate goals, which is good because nobody else really understands each individual country, but not great if the countries don't set good enough goals, which is essentially what we're seeing. So the countries aren't setting goals that are strict enough, and they're not hitting those goals that they are setting. So it's not great.
Right. I mean, I think that without public pressure to make these changes happen, like it's sort of like wishful thinking. It's like, well, like the government of that country doesn't have a whole lot of like political incentive really to make broad sweeping changes to actually enact these things.
Broad sweeping changes are just also really hard to make.
Yeah.
We talked about the 40-hour work week. Like, that took a century to really enact. And a lot of people went through hell to get there. When you're working 75, 100-hour work weeks, like that's insane and it's dangerous. But that kind of law can take 100 years to enact and to perfect and to work on. We actually don't have time. And I understand that the timeline is very short, but I also look at like these global and international laws, and they take way longer to enact and like really do than we have in our timeline. Realistically, they just take that long. So
yeah, humanity moves slowly.
Yeah, like societal structures are slow and big.
And difficult and require a lot of like work on the behalf of the people fighting for that cause, right? Like
exactly.
This is sacrifice. This is protesting consistently. This is the long game. Yeah.
But we don't have time for the long game, man. That's like,
I
don't know what the option is. It's really scary because, like, these leaders, they're getting super stoked. They're going to these conferences. They're thinking, I'm going to make this different. And then they come back and they just fall right back into business as usual, even to the point where they are enacting bills, shutting down lawsuits that are aimed at reducing emissions. I found an Associated Press article that just kind of lists some of the lawsuits. There's a lot, so we could go over those, but there's a couple that are a little scary. I think one, we reported on the Superfunds in a previous news episode from New York and Vermont that would force fossil fuel companies to pay into state-based funds for their like greenhouse emissions. Well, the Department of Justice sued New York and Vermont to stop those Superfund laws from happening.
How ironic.
Yeah, you just like, yeah, we'll get excited at COP and then we'll just, yeah. Man, that really sucks.
I mean, yeah, I think it's just like, again, also as any administration changes, what one previous administration did to try to enact those regulations gets immediately undone. It's like,
yeah,
it's,
I think that's really American too. Like,
yes,
it's very much like, I just will undo the last guy's thing because the last guy did it, and like, fuck it, if it's good for the country, it doesn't matter. So yeah,
that's where we're stuck right now.
That's exactly it. And the one that scares me the most is when there's a power grab that's like hidden. And we just saw it again happen. I think this happened in June even, so very recent. The Senate used the Congressional Review Act to overturn California's longstanding authority under the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act was actually a waiver and was something that was under state law. So it's questionable whether the Senate even had the power to do that. And, you know, right now, if you look at the rhetoric, I used Ground News to like really look at like both sides of the rhetoric here. The Senate is sort of being like, well, people are just whining over pedantic stuff. And it's like, dude, this is the law. What?
Pedantic? That's how, what?
They're basically saying they can do whatever they want and that the law doesn't matter. But
This is the federal government saying
yes.
they can do whatever they want. States' laws
Yes.
and state waivers, specific state laws that have been enacted in order to curb emissions in said state are
Yes.
something that federal government now believes they should have the ability to say whether or not they agree with that, essentially.
Yes. They have enabled themselves.
Holy crazy oversight. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so because the Congressional Review Act is against like laws and rules, but the Clean Air Act is not a law or a rule. It is an agreed upon state waiver. This is my understanding. If I'm wrong, you can put it in the comments and I'll correct myself later. This should only be a state issue. And 17 other states and Washington, D.C. have all been like, yeah, I want some of these. I'm going to use these rules too from thanks, California. Like, we're going to adopt that. And I think that because other states have adopted it, Congress has been like, oh, we can just take that because it's more than one state now or something. I don't know. Again, it's just a power grab. It's just them going like, I don't know if I have the right to do this, but I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to set this precedent that says that I get to make decisions over the EPA because we can.
I find this stuff so, just ironic coming from a party that has always fought so hard for small federal government and states. This feels like the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
It is the exact opposite of that.
This is the exact opposite of that. But they've been doing that, man. They've been doing that.
I know. Right. And it's just like left and right doing that at all levels.
Yep.
And it just continues. I mean, it doesn't blow my mind. I don't know the right words to describe. My jaw is not dropped. I'm not surprised, but it's just sort of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I do know. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh, again, okay. Got it.
Yeah. You're like, you just exist in this cognitive dissonance and I struggle with it.
Yeah. Before the call, you were like, where are the don't tread on me people?
Yeah. Where are they in this fight?
Where are they? You know where they are? They're there, excited that they get to keep their trucks.
Yeah. They're like, hey, where's the tread?
Yeah.
They're like, now that I like the boots you're wearing, step on my neck.
Yeah. Pretty much. That's pretty much what's going on. Because this power grab happened because they were like, California's taking your trucks away.
Yes. Right.
So we're going to make sure that California doesn't have the power to take your trucks away because all these other states are doing it too. And the don't tread on me people were like, I want my trucks. And now we have now the federal government has more power over states.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the same thing we were talking about in our last episode. They were like, the oil industry is suing Greenpeace.
Yeah.
Over this defamation lawsuit, but actually it just sets precedent for them to be able to take freedom of speech away.
Forced thought in terms of okay, what is this regulation or overturning this, what is the actual kind of domino effect of that is not usually considered. Yeah. If the immediate thing is I get to keep my truck, it's not it. But it's like, my understanding of the Clean Air Act was that they weren't going to sell new gas vehicles after 2030 or not that you could not have one. They're not going to take them away. Is that right? Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. No, you're not wrong. They're not going to sell. But essentially we're not selling these anymore and we have higher smog tests. But it's the exact same argument as they're trying to take my guns away.
Yeah.
It's literally just, by the way, if you're listening to this, no one's trying to take your guns away. They just want to know that you have them and know that you are mentally stable.
Yeah.
It's really big difference. No one's trying to take anything away from you.
Literally no. That's really kind of honestly never been a position of the Democratic Party.
Ever. Ever.
Gun laws do not equal taking guns away. No, I'm pretty pro having guns actually.
Yeah.
Personally.
Same.
Yeah. I mean, fear keeps people in a state that they can easily be manipulated.
Yeah. That's right. But the moral is like, no one's taking your guns, no one's taking your trucks, but they are taking your rights. And you're kind of just letting them.
Yeah. So be more discerning around how these things are changing. And also, yeah, remember that big sweeping changes do take a lot of time and a lot of energy and effort. And quite frankly, if I may, almost all rights we have as individuals currently are something that was provided after years and years of protest, often violent protests even. So I'm not saying that violence is something you should do, but it's a part of human histories, particularly American history.
Absolutely.
This is how we have everything that we hold dear. And I think that we really have lost sight of that part of American history where civil disobedience and making people uncomfortable is the point. That is how we move forward.
It is. It is the only way America has ever moved forward. In fact, is how America became America.
Whoa, sheriffs on tea.
Step one, civil disobedience.
If Twitter existed in 1776 or whatever, when the Boston Tea Party was happening, would there have been people who are like, but think of the tea companies? Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, they
suck.
The same people that are like, but that window got broken of that Target or whatever. It's like, oh my God, think of the bigger picture here, people. Like, what are we talking about? I'm not gonna,
I don't know how to end this without saying, like, go be violent. We're not saying go be violent.
My God, that's not what we're advocating for at all. But it's but making people uncomfortable, protests have to make people uncomfortable. This is how we force people who don't think about these things to have to think about them. And that's how democracy happens, is when people are thinking and can have informed opinions on what's happening around them. And unless it's in front of them, how would they have access to that, right? We're all in our echo chambers, and protests are basically a way to force someone to be outside of that echo chamber. For a brief moment.
It's a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah, I think the momentum that happened recently with the No King's Day protests in the States, or really international, that was not just in the States, I think is awesome momentum. I think that I definitely think that there is like a growing movement here that are starting to see these federal government overreaches happening. I have hope that there are enough people here that see the kind of forest between the trees.
See the forest for the trees?
Kind of thing?
Through the trees?
Yeah.
For the trees?
Through the trees, sort of. Yeah. Where you can see it for what it is through the nonsense, political rhetoric, sensationalization that is happening. So I think that honestly, all Americans have far more in common than we think that we do. And we are all in this together. So we got to figure it out and not let a couple dudes with all the money and resources kind of just
make all the decisions. Just like
take
just like steamroll.
Yeah.
Like America, my biggest shock here is that Americans were just like, oh yeah, just these two dudes came in and steamrolled the country, and the Americans were like, cool. There's a whole group of people who are just like, I accept that.
Yeah. Well, there are people that really believe that wealth equals intelligence.
How embarrassing.
Sorry. You can't pop that bubble. It doesn't. Yeah. They don't know. No. Just running a company and running a government are not the same.
Not even a little bit. No, that's why they're called the public and private sector. They're different sectors. They have different goals and different ambitions. They care about different things.
Yeah.
We can't run them the same way.
We can't. And dare I say, the relentless pursuit of profit is never going to be in public interest. So if we care about humans and trying to make our situation better, I think that running things like a company is not the path forward. But there are a lot of, I think there are a lot of different opinions on that. But ultimately, we've got to keep this country a place that respects different viewpoints and a place that can exist can exist and for the people.
Use critical thinking. Take care of each other. Remember that everybody's in it together. You're all building a country together, a world together. Not that hard to be a good human. It's not that hard to not be an asshole.
Right. Mind your business, and we're all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. With that, we'll remind you, keep saying your piece. You're doing a great job. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.